guys, it's Adam from LUCIDPIXUL, and today I bring you none other than the Art of Death Stranding. Now, disclaimer, I haven't played the game yet, but I have watched dozens of hours of footage. I've just been so busy I haven't had a chance to play any new games or invest any time into it, but I have a very, very good impression of it. I've watched many, many hours. I've seen a lot of the progressions through the game and everything like that. And I have a very strong, very definitive opinion of this work, of this game, both from a gamer's perspective and from an artist's perspective. Of course, today we're going to be primarily focusing on the art, being an art channel, but I do have opinions of both that are big opinions. And they're coming from the perspective of somebody who considers Kojima one of my personal favorite game designers of all time with the Metal Gear series. I've always been a huge fan of his work, even the real weird shit too. But let's get to that. Let's crack this book open, and what's one of the first things we're going to see? What our first impression is Norman Reedus. He made a very strong point, and I really love this about the fact that leaving Konami, which was probably a very dramatic situation, took the whole gaming industry by storm, and then he started his own production company, Kojima Productions, which is this is the first game he's made under the umbrella of this new company. Left in a very sad way. Or at least one of the scars was the fact that he had to abandon the game Silent Hill, which he was producing with Guillermo del Toro, with one of my personal favorite directors of all time, film directors, Guillermo del Toro. I've expressed that many times in the past. And actor Norman Reedus. It was a perfect combination, and it was probably one of the most brilliant playable teaser games of all time. It was an absolute work of genius, and it really broke everybody's heart that they had to let this project go. It saddens me how many things that Guillermo ends up having to abandon as well. So this is very much an homage to the team that he came, and the fact that they got to come with him into this new production, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Now, moving into the game, we immediately get to see some art, and very iconic art. I can't remember the name of the artist. I know a lot of you probably do, so let me know in the comments below. I can't remember his name, but a very famous artist who has a very iconic style of art, and very splashy, very loose, very beautiful stuff, but not to be mistaken with the kind of stuff you're going to do in a normal game studio setting. It's not practical in that sense. It's very stylized and cool looking, very comic book influenced, but not practical. The practical stuff is what you see when we flip the page here, okay? And one of the things that really defines Kojima's work in particular is his meticulous attention to detail. He works with industrial designers, costume designers, fashion designers, weapon designers, people who do a lot of practical design. And he recruits them to do a lot of these because they translate into things that are very usable in the real sense of the word. You could literally make clothing and fashion directly based off of this kind of stuff, and it would work functionally in the real world, albeit very stylized, futuristic looking things. But I'm sure a lot of fashion design is based off of this because it's definitely informed by it. So one of the things that really defines Kojima's style, again, a very loose, gesturally stuff. Here you can see the difference between the loose sketch, the loose drawing, and the polished drawing. And a little bit of a quick tip I learned years ago is when you're doing a rough drawing, draw with a bold, loose pencil. Like if you have a pencil or a pen, or your digital brush, if you're working in Photoshop, don't work with a fine tip pen. That puts you into precision mode. No, get a fatter pen, and you'll notice how much it immediately loosens you up and gets you a lot more gesturally in your flow. And look at how nice and loose these pencil marks are. Very loose and bold. And that later on gets translated into something more polished and refined with a cleaned up line. Again, look at these designs. You can tell that he's probably recruited people who've designed sport attire, hiking attire, winter boots, ski boots, things like that, or hiking gloves or painter's gloves, different types of things that are informed, and that gets injected into these designs for practical purposes. It puts a lot of attention into unique details, things that most people would kind of take for granted, he fleshes out every finite detail of his games. It might be equally frustrating and inspiring to work in that environment because of the breadth of work that you have to do to create incredibly original stuff. I love these. Makes me think of the walkers in Phantom Pain, Metal Gear Phantom Pain. Kind of has those animal legs, and you can, when you see this, it kind of it makes you think of like ostrich legs or deer legs or something like that, which you immediately make that association with and think, that probably gives you jumping power or running power. There's that iconic animal leg type of anatomy that he injects into these prosthetics. I love that kind of stuff, and it's cool and weird looking at the same time. It creates a very unique kind of almost creepy look to it. Handcuffs, all these little finer details that he's fleshing out. Now we get into some character designs here, and we look at the character of Bridget Strand here. Notice that when it comes to Kojima's games, and we see these kind of very classical, this particular artist, please let me know in the comments below, artist who designs them, they all pretty much look the same facially. Like this, if you look at the characters back from the original Metal Gear to Death Stranding, they're basically the same facial character with different hair and clothing. The emphasis is really on body style and fashion. There's a lot of emphasis on fashion in this game as well. And the 3D department, like this, it looks like I'm looking at a Metal Gear Solid game cover from 9 years ago, literally. But for what it's worth, it's just kind of setting the stage, and it's letting you know that this is a Kojima game, right? Because we make that association between the artistic style and his games in particular. Again, fashion. You might not know this. Well, you might know it if you watch my videos often enough, but I very often reference fashion design, but not just the generic, Walmart stuff. Who would reference Walmart? Well, maybe you would, but I'm talking about fine art fashion, abstract fashion, surrealist fashion, dark fashion. There's a lot of genius and beauty in the colors and the forms and the flow of hairstyles and jewelry and different types of accessories and the different cuts and different fabrics and different textures in fashion that you should not take for granted. And this actually looks like it was probably created by a trained fashion designer based on the very fact that the emphasis is on these very practical, realistic cuts of fabric. And the faces are kind of left aside. More of the shape of the hair has been emphasized in this. And that translates into something more concrete, like the design on the left. For Amélie. Die Hardman, you have to ask yourself, is he the good guy or the bad guy? I don't know. It's hard to figure out. Never dead. Never dead. My boy, Guillermo del Toro. Very weird character in the game, eh? Like how they portrayed him in the game is like, he's this kind of creepy weirdo kind of guy. I'm sure Guillermo had no problem with that whatsoever, but my boy, mi querido, mi hermano, mi negro. Kojima's characters, male and female, are unapologetically sex symbols, right? There's always these like supermodel, super emphasized sexuality in these characters. Quiet, for instance. This is a character who has a name very similar to Quiet, who can only breathe through her skin, so that's why she always has to walk around in a bikini all the time. I'm sitting there going, yeah, okay, that's good backstory excuse for showing boobies, right? But Mama is no exception to that, albeit a mechanic character, so she's got a little dirt on her face, so okay, that's very credible as far as that goes. But still cool design. I still like the design. Here, more of a warrior character. Still, a warrior, a supermodel dressed as an assassin, as some kind of a warrior character. Fragile. She's very fragile. With her French haircut. It cuts like this. Very delicate, very française. Right? I love this design. Again, look at the loose use of bold design. Look at how those lines are very loose and spontaneous. That's because the artist is working with this very thick Indian ink pen. And look, if you see how it translates here, how it looks in this version of the page versus what we see with the pencil sketch, you get a very different vibe, right? Got a very different feel having these different lines. Again, here, very loose sketches, very bold and dark. Now here's something really cool, and I didn't even really notice this because I didn't see the character that much in the game. I didn't get that far into the game yet, or I was kind of like glancing over every now and then. But I noticed something, and the first time I shot this, then my slider ended up fritzing out on me. Long story. I had mentioned something in it and didn't realize that if you flip the page, there was evidence of it on the next page. And I was looking at this thinking to myself, wow, how clever is it that they used Egyptian iconography, the gold and yellow stripes and the shape of his hoodie and the shape of the emblem on his shoulder looks like kind of like a pharaoh's headdress, to give him this both a dark but yet royal, godlike persona, but nested in realism, and using gold and black, using that shape language in it. And when you turn the page, I went, oh, okay, yeah, Pharaoh, okay, I get it. They thought of that. They made it very obvious that was kind of like what they were basing the design off of. Absolutely fantastic, very clever design. Now, if all Kojima did was practical industrial weapon designs and costume designs and vehicle designs and all that kind of stuff, if that's all he did, then I wouldn't have this admiration for his work that I do. And one of the things that really amazes me about what he produces is the fact that he's equally capable of being the most anal retentive designer you've ever known, but is equally capable of letting go and allowing himself to just express and create very freely. And when you look at when he gets into these more story-based things, he completely goes off the handle in terms of getting completely off the wall and nightmarish and alien-esque type of celestial creatures. He did this in Phantom Pain, particularly when you go up against these sniper characters, these dark kind of, I don't know what they're called, I can't remember what they're called, but kind of like these ghostly type of characters, all wearing practical armor that gives them these kind of superhero abilities, like the ability to jump 600 feet in the air and the ability to get, invisibility or armor or these different types of things. And you look at how he gets into the world of the surreal. And when you juxtapose that next to what is otherwise a very realistic, atmospheric, rocky, natural, grassy landscape, and then you get this, it's very jarring because he's pulled you into the world of reality and then pulls you into the world of nightmares in that same context. And that is very powerful storytelling. Look, he just goes completely off the wall with all of these crazy creations. Completely, it's like as if you just completely turned the page, you did 180 and completely produced a different game. A lot of people would look at this or would treat this as two different games, and he doesn't. He brings realism and complete weirdness into the same game in a very fearless way. You might love it, you might not. I personally love it. I love the fact that he kind of weirds me out with his stuff. He's not afraid to be a complete quack. I love these creature designs. Now you're almost getting into Dark Soulsy kind of stuff. Flying fish. Really cool alien type of, look at this, psychedelic. Now we're getting all trippy. I mean, this to me means, oh my God, there's more to this than meets the eye. There's a lot more depth to this game than you might think. Here's the thing. It might seem easy to do this from an outsider's perspective. I say try. And in trying, you're going to be learning something. It's very difficult to go overboard with your creativity. We very often tend to hold ourselves back. And what this is to me is evidence of incredible creative bravery. Because it takes balls to create like this. It takes courage to create like this. Even if you think you can do it. Translating thoughts to paper can cause you to tighten up, and he doesn't. He completely lets go and allows himself to create, but then trusts himself and trusts his design team to be able to refine this and polish it up into something a lot more practical. Now we're getting into almost prehistoric type of influence designs, very creepy kind of skeletal creatures. Taken right out of the book of Dark Souls. This is practically the Dark Souls creature that you find in a little tunnel before you enter the building. These are very reminiscent of those nightmarish types of creatures. And then you get into some environment design where, again, referencing reviews I've done of books in the past, the heavy use of photo textures, photo bashing, matte painting. But like I've mentioned in the past, a lot of artists walk into art, they see this kind of stuff and they think, oh, okay, if I just take a bunch of pictures and I slap them together, that'll create a great image. No, You still have to understand the fundamentals of atmosphere and depth and composition and value and color in order to make something like this work. And you have to learn the techniques of matte painting on top of it. It's not just about, if it was just about slapping photographs together, then anybody could do it. And not everybody can do this to this level of quality. And here, notice this as well. We have these very industrial designs, but there's all these little indications of atmosphere. The haze, the atmospheric haze, the smoke and the birds, these creatures falling down from the sky, moving asteroids and stuff like that. A lot of movement juxtaposed against very architectural designs with characters scattered throughout the scene to give you a sense of context and scale. I'm going to end here. There's a lot more I haven't even explored yet in the book. I'm going to stop here, but here's my thoughts on Kojima. I'm going to keep it short and I'm going to keep it sweet. And I'm going to be honest. I'm not saying this as a Kojima fanboy. I judge people's works objectively, and I don't base my judgment of their current pieces based on things in the past. But I know Kojima's work quite well. I've followed him ever since I was a little kid, ever since his first early games. That man is fearless. Not only is he fearless, but his genius comes in his forward-thinking approach to games. The original Metal Gear was the first real game that really exploited stealth mechanics. He took a chance at making a slow pace a game mechanic, of making the act of hiding rather than fighting a game mechanic, and it turned out, well, to be a hugely successful franchise and has succeeded to great degree to today. Still one of the most popular games of all time. And what people might not realize, if you aren't aware of this side of Kojima's thought process, or if you haven't, even if you do, if you haven't given him credit for it, in moving from Konami to Kojima Productions, this being his first production, is allowing him the mental and director freedom to innovate and experiment with the next pioneering game, which we might not even realize is a pioneering game. If you follow the trend in society, documentaries, films, anything, the more society is informed, the more we become more educated people as a society, the more attention to detail and realism becomes an issue. If you go back and look at documentaries and films that were done back in the 1970s and 80s and stuff like that, because people were so much less informed, or as you date back even more, people were more racist, they were more ignorant, the way people were portrayed was insultingly bad, things that would not hold water by today's standards. And when games like, for instance, World of Warcraft came out, it was what made games like World of Warcraft, particularly World of Warcraft, so successful was not only the fact that it was such an open world game, it was the fact that when you looked at the clock in the game, it was the same as the clock on your wall. It was real time, where games prior to World of Warcraft sped up time. They got you hyped up. You get into fights with your friends because you were so like this from living in this fast-paced environment for so long. And World of Warcraft slowed it down, brought you back into a world clock. And Kojima brought you back into somewhat realistic speed in stealth mechanics. And what he's doing right now with Death Stranding, what a lot of people scrutinize about the game, understandably so, is that he's made real life mechanics a mechanic. Traveling from point A to point B, carrying a load with you, making sure you don't drop it, taking into account the terrain that you're walking on, dealing with very realistic obstacles. He's bringing you further and further into the realm of real life. That's the trend he's setting with his game. Is it make for a super engaging game mechanic? Not yet, necessarily, depending on who your audience is. My only annoyance with Kojima games is that I would not want to play. I would get tired of playing Death Stranding for the same reason I returned Red Dead Redemption. 2 hours into the game and it's still more cutscenes. Like, okay, I miss holding my remote control. I want to play with buttons. For the love of God, let me play with a button. So in that particular case, it's just cutscene after cutscene after cutscene. Confided, beautifully done. But just, I want to play a game. So that's my only real annoyance, and it's not his first time being guilty of overdoing cinematics. But you put that aside, and I think that he's an absolute freaking genius from a design perspective, from a creative perspective, and from a forward-thinking game designer perspective. So I have nothing but respect for the guy and for the team who worked on this absolutely beautiful production. So thank you for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. I had a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to be playing it in the future. This book has definitely only encouraged me to want to play it. And happy painting. Take care.